The cursor had blinked in the same place for 80 years. Last night, it moved. 3 words appeared at the end of a dead station's log, finishing a sentence no living person had ever read the beginning of. And then the screen went still. Mara Okonkwo saw it happen at 3:14 in the morning, alone in the listening hall, a cup of coffee going cold at her elbow. She was 6 hours from the end of her final shift, and she had already stopped believing anyone was out there. 20 years she had given this place, aiming dishes into the dark, waiting for a voice that wasn't just an echo of our own. The dark had never once answered. Tonight she was signing off for good, and she was almost relieved. The frequency belonged to Halcyon Station, a research outpost drifting unmanned that had fallen silent exactly 80 years ago, mid-transmission, mid-word. Its final log entry ended on a comma, with nothing behind it, a sentence that walked off a cliff. Every trainee studied that file. The last line read, "Power reserves failing. We are moving the last of the crew to the..." And there it stopped. No period. No cause given. Only 80 years of silence where the rest should have been. So when the carrier wave lit her screen, faint, narrow band, drifting the way old transmitters drift as they cool, Mara assumed it was noise, a ghost in the wiring. Her thumb was already moving to dismiss it and go home. But the signature matched. Same frequency. Same drift-corrected fingerprint cataloged 8 decades before she was born. Halcyon was transmitting again. Her hands went cold a full second before her mind understood why. She reached for the boring explanation first, because in her work, the boring explanation was almost always the true one. A dead machine had simply come back to life. Nothing more. Halcyon ran on a radioisotope generator, plutonium, half-life just under 88 years. After 80 years adrift, it would have decayed to roughly half its power. Faint. Failing. But perhaps still enough to wake one small, stubborn computer. A little dust shedding from a solar panel. A capacitor crawling past a threshold. A watchdog timer doing the one thing it was built for. Cold boot the system, and resume the log precisely where it had left off. Mundane. Provable. She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. She wrote it up, calm and clinical, ready to flag the anomaly for the day shift, her very last act before walking out that door forever. Then the log resumed, and it did not come back in telemetry. No voltages, no temperatures, no error codes scrolling past. It simply finished the sentence, in plain, unhurried, human words. "We are moving the last of the crew to the lower deck," it wrote, "where the cold comes slower. If you are reading this, then you already know we were never coming home." Mara stopped breathing. Stations do not write like that. Machines record data, people compose sentences, and every soul aboard Halcyon had been dead, by any accounting, for 80 long years. Her instinct turned forensic. It was all she had to hold on to. She pulled the timestamps. The internal clock had never reset. It had counted every second of those 80 years, unbroken, patient, straight through to tonight. Then she remembered the first rule they teach you. Received is not sent. Light takes time to cross the dark. Halcyon drifts far out. Hours of lag lie between it and Earth. Whatever she was reading had left long before it arrived. Hours old, then. That helped. That was almost comforting, until she ran the distance, 3 separate times, and the number came back wrong. Closer than the archive swore. The station was not where its grave had been marked. It had moved. More lines arrived. First person, present tense, describing the dark beyond the hull, the way the stars out there refused to twinkle, the hum of a ventilation fan that had no earthly reason to still be turning. "It is very quiet here," it wrote. "I have been quiet for a long time. For a long time, I did not know whether quiet was the same thing as being gone." She built the reasonable cage around it, brick by brick. An onboard assistant, trained on the commander's old journals, rebooted after 80 years and speaking in his voice out of habit. A parrot repeating a dead man's phrases. It was a good cage. Solid. It held for exactly 4 minutes. Then the log wrote something no 80-year-old machine, however clever, could possibly know. It wrote about the storm rolling over the Atlantic, the one darkening her window at that very moment. Then it wrote the date, tonight's date, to the day. And then, one slow letter at a time, it wrote her name. Mara. not a call sign, not a frequency code, her own name, spelled out across a screen from 80 years of silence. Every explanation she owned crumbled at once, and she was left holding the only honest thing a careful mind could still say. Nothing she had witnessed was, strictly, impossible. A machine can wake, a clock can count, and none of it explained the words. She thought of all the nights she had sat here, certain the universe was an empty room. She had wanted, more than she ever admitted, to be wrong. Now the wrongness was on the screen in front of her, and she was terrified. The log paused, the cursor blinked, exactly as it had blinked for 80 patient years. And then, letter by letter, it asked her a single question. You stayed. Why did you stay when no one ever answered? Her hand hovered over the key. Outside, unbidden, the great dish began to turn toward the dark, and for the first time in 20 years, the dark seemed to lean closer, waiting to hear what she would say back.